I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the Board of Trustees regular board meeting, December 5, 2006. Administration Building at Enterprise Road. It's approximately 5:30. Would we please rise for a moment of silence? As we have our moment of silence, let's please remember Mr. Juan Garcia. He passed away recently, a longtime veteran, visual arts supervisor, and employed with our district for over 30 years. Our condolences to the Garcia family. And Ms. Irma Becerril passed away also recently after about 40 years of service. Her last position was Federal Programs Administrator. Let's bow our heads for a moment of silence. Thank you. Item 3, Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Texas Pledge.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas one and indivisible.
Thank you. Item 4, roll call. All board members are present with the exception of Mr. Colunga. Item 5, recommend approving the agenda for the regular board meeting of December 5, 2006. With any corrections, Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Dr. Escobedo, members of the board. Yes, there's some corrections and deletions under conference presentation. Item 3A3 will not be addressed in tonight's board meeting. The gentleman that's going to present will not be able to make it. That's under conference presentation A3. Also, under general function, item A8 will not be addressed in tonight's board meeting, as well as item A9 will not be addressed in tonight's board meeting. That's A8 and A9 under general function. Also, under closed meeting, personnel matters, item A35, pages 110, 111, and 112 are to be replaced, and I think you have those changes already in front of you. That's item A35, pages 110, 111, and 112. Those are the changes and deletions.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda for December 5? A motion by Mr. Aguilar, seconded by Mr. Powers. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes unanimously. Item number 6, recommend approving the minutes of the rescheduled regular board meeting of November 14, 2006, and the minutes of the public notice to canvass the election votes of November 16, 2006, with any corrections. Mr. Gonzalez.
As submitted, unless we have any corrections from any board members.
Everybody saw Mrs. Galavan?
I did see on page, let me find the page here, 6. In the middle of the page where it says Lehman asked administration whether or not in the past the employees had been paid for this holiday. There's no response there. There should be a response. I think it was yes, they have been.
Who will add that? Yes, the answer was a response was yes from me, and so we had paid them in the past.
Any other corrections to the minutes? If not, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes as described in item 6? Motion by Mr. Power, second by Mr. Aguilar. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes unanimously. Item 7, Superintendent's Report. 8, Conference Presentation. 1, Announcement of the 2006-2007 Board Committees and Board Committee Members. Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Dr. Escobedo. I believe you sent us a information sheet on that, and either you want me to announce them or do you want to announce them?
Go ahead.
There are some committees that have been appointed by Dr. Escobedo, Board President, and I'd like to announce them for the general public to know. Budget Committee, Chair is Joe Colunga. Members are Herman Otis Powers Jr. and Rubén Cortés Jr. For Curriculum, the Chair will be Susan Galvan. Members are Rolando Aguilar and Rubén Cortés Jr. For Facilities, Chair is Pat Lehman. Members are Dr. Enrique Escobedo and Mr. Herman Otis Powers Jr. For Technology, the Chair is Mr. Pat Lehman. Members, Dr. Enrique Escobedo and Susan Galvan. Insurance Committee, Chair, Herman Otis Powers Jr. Members, Pat Lehman and Susan Galvan. Internal Audit. Chair, Dr. Enrique Escobedo. Members, Ruben Cortez Jr. and Mr. Pat Lehman. For Policy, Chair, Mr. Orlando Aguilar. Members, Ruben Cortez Jr. and Susan Galvan.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. This is for informational purposes only. Any comments? If not, moving on to item 2, presentation on public reporting of progress in meeting highly qualified teacher requirements. Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Dr. Escobedo. This is a report that's going to be made by Human Resources, and Ms. Yolanda Gavito will be addressing the board at this particular time. Ms. Gavito?
Good evening, Dr. Escobedo, Mr. Gonzalez, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen. The No Child Left Behind Act of 2001 requires all teachers in core academic subject areas to be highly qualified by the end of the 2005-2006 school year. In order to be highly qualified under NCLB, a teacher must have at least a bachelor's degree, full state certification, and demonstrated competency in the core academic subject area assigned. An elementary teacher can demonstrate competency by passing a state certification exam or meeting the NCLB HOUSE criteria. HOUSE, H-O-U-S-E, stands for High Objective Uniform Standard of Evaluation. A secondary teacher can demonstrate competency in the academic subject taught by passing a state certification exam, having an academic major, graduate degree, or coursework equivalent to an undergraduate major, or meeting the HOUSE criteria. The No Child Left Behind Act requires districts to report their progress towards meeting the highly qualified teacher requirements. We are pleased to report the following. BISD has met the state target of 100% of our classes are taught by highly qualified teachers. And 100% of our teachers are highly qualified in regular ed. However, currently the TEA district report is indicating 99.9% of our teachers are highly qualified in regular ed. We have corrected a mathematical error with TEA, and we are awaiting the district report to be amended by TEA off the website so that it will reflect 100% of our teachers as highly qualified. I've been in communication with Scott Lewis from TEA and right up until 4 o'clock this afternoon in trying to make that change on the district report, and they're working with their computer services department to get it changed, so it's forthcoming on the website. Special education teachers were first required to be reported for highly qualified status in the 2005-2006 school year. The 2005-2006 report indicates that 96.3% of our special education teachers are highly qualified. When first reported in July 2006, 6 special education teachers in the secondary schools were not highly qualified for the subject assigned. Since then, since July, 5 of those teachers have attained highly qualified status, and 1 teacher has left our district. So as of today, 100% of our special education teachers are highly qualified. In addition, 100% of our teachers received high-quality professional development. BISD has taken steps to ensure that our teachers maintain highly qualified status by screening all candidates prior to hiring to make sure they meet the highly qualified criteria. In addition, all proposed changes of assignments for teachers are carefully reviewed to ensure compliance. More specific information concerning our district and our campus results can be found on the TEA website, www.tea.state.us/NCLB. That is our report this evening. I'll be glad to entertain any questions that you may have.
Questions or comments from the board? Mr. Aguilar?
I just want to congratulate the staff, BISD, for accomplishing such an outstanding goal of 100%. So congratulations goes to Mr. Pineda, Mrs. Gavito, and all their staff.
Thank
I do have a, even though it's not on the agenda, but it's also personnel. What about the paraprofessionals? I know probably you're not prepared to do this, but perhaps later on I would like to know how we're doing with our paraprofessionals also. I believe they also need to have an associate degree.
If I may, Mr. Aguilar, you don't have to have an associate's degree. They must have 48 college hours in order to be eligible to be hired by our district. And since No Child Left Behind came into place, we have been adhering to that guideline. And those paraprofessionals that did not meet that guideline at the time were given a grace period of, I believe, 3 years, Mr. Pineda, to be able to get into compliance.
I believe it was 3 years, and we were given different avenues by which to do that, where campuses could do some appraisal
Yes.
as well and evaluate their staff. So they were given some leeway by which to work.
And you have some, Ms.
Yes,
Cuellar?
yes, sir. The paraprofessionals also had to meet the same deadline of the 2005-2006 school year. What we required of them was either an associate's degree or the 48 college hours, or they attended a training session, the TOPS training, and also had to be evaluated, which was a little bit more than most districts did. And we are also at 100%.
Thank you. Excellent.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Thank you, Ms. Gavito, for the very thorough presentation.
Thank you.
Item 3 was pulled. Moving on to item 4, presentation of the Brownsville Independent School District Quarterly Overtime Report for the period ending September 30, 2006. Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Dr. Scarlett, the members of the board. You have the quarterly overtime report. This is for the first quarter. Because we started our fiscal year in July, so it'd be July, August, and September. So the overtime would be through September 30th of this year. You have any questions, Mr. Sanchez would be glad to answer any questions you might have on the overtime, or myself. I'll be addressing it. This is just information for you all.
Questions or comments from the board? Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. Moving on to item 5, presentation of the Brownsville Independent School District Quarterly Investment Report for the period ended September 30th, 2006. Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Dr. Escobedo. Once again, this is a report on what we're doing with our quarterly investments. I'll have Mr. Sanchez just give a little brief presentation to bring you up to date where we are in our investments. Sanchez?
Thank you, Superintendent Gonzalez. Board members, again, I think the important thing to look is if you look to the last page of your booklet, and is to show how last quarter to this quarter the market has recovered considerably. And of course, our investments, we tend to go out about 180 days out. Safety of principal, liquidity, so that we can have working capital to meet payroll are important. So you can see we're doing a lot better than we did last year. That's due to the market recovery. We still have our CDs at our state depository are doing real well, so the majority of our investments are there.
Questions or comments from the board? Mr. Lehman.
Mr. Gonzalez, we already got issued the 135 million on the bond?
Yes, we have.
And where is that at?
Mr. Sanchez?
We are currently investing that in what we call a flex repo, and the president of the board has just signed a document. Then we will try to reflect that as a separate presentation for you.
But that's not reflecting in this
No, sir.
report? And that is, of course, in compliance with arbitrage law, right?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Moving on to item B, standing board agenda item 6, board calendars. Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Dr. Escobedo, members of the board. There are a few items that I want to bring up to the attention of the board and to the general public. This coming Thursday, let's not forget, Thursday and Friday, there's be Santa and Friends for our elementary children to be at the auditorium at the old Central Middle School building, now called the CAB, Central Administrative Building. And on the Thursday in the evening, and I know that Mr. Lehman and Mr. Powers have already donated $10 each for a gift. We're asking for a donation of of $10 or a gift worth at least $10 to be able to enter. The auditorium seats approximately 700 or so. 500? It's 500. About 550 seating capacity. So I'm asking for those that want to go. It's a great entertainment for the entire community. It'll be for the adults of the community on the 7th. It takes a gift of $10. That's all to get in, and it starts at 7 p.m. And it's very important for us to get out there and give those gifts so we can give that to those kids and then get some real good entertainment. The entertainment will be from our own high school students, and it's going to be very active. It's going to be a lot of interaction, a lot of interactivity. So I'm asking all of you to please go, and I'll be there, and I'll be in the front row, hopefully, if somebody saves me a seat. And
I
so
thought you
can
were going to
enjoy
be part of the
evening.
program, sir.
Well, I don't know how to sing, but certainly if one of those students comes in and asks me to participate, I will be able to participate. Also on Friday, December the 8th in the evening, there's something very special going on at Pace High School. So make plans to attend the first annual Brownsville Estudiantina Championship with a special performance by the UTB Guitar Ensemble. The Estudiantina will be from all 5 high schools. And so I ask you to go to Pace High School, the school auditorium. Admission is free. Doors open at 6:30 p.m. So if you can, go listen to our Estudiantinas on December the 8th. That's Friday. Other things that are coming up, there's a dropout committee meeting, a field trip on the 14th, which some of our task force from our dropout graduation rate committee will be attending to be seeing some other sites that are doing some positive things, seeing how we incorporate them into ours. Then we have a next regular board meeting on the 19th. And very important, the end of the first semester for our students is on December 20th. And that we'll be able to complete the first semester before the Christmas holidays. And then the 21st and the 22nd, the employees, 21st is the last day for employees, and then the 22nd is when everybody goes on vacation. We come back to work, and there's a correction. We don't come back to work until January the 8th. Okay, those other days that were there, they were mistakenly put in. The 4th and the 5th are not staff development days. We don't actually come back to the 8th, and it's staff development waiver day, and students come in on the 9th. There's new teacher in service for those new teachers that are coming in for the second semester on the 13th. And then we only have one board meeting, hopefully, if you approve it tonight, to cancel the second, and that will be on the 16th of January. And then the 18th of January, a very important date, we will have our BLA graduations at the Central Administrative Building at 7 p.m. So please make plans to attend on that day. It's January the 18th. Any questions, concerns?
Questions, comments from the board? No, thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. The next item is a public comment period. This is time for citizen, staff, or students to provide their comments to the board. Statements and questions from the audience will not be permitted during other portions of the meeting. So please let's hear from you now if you have any comments to present. To have your comments heard tonight, your name and the subject matter of your comments must appear in the sign-on sheet, which is located in the rear of the meeting room. Each speaker will be limited to 5 minutes to complete his or her comments. With all due courtesy, I will strictly enforce a time limit. Mr. Saldana, you'll help me out? If a group of people wants to be heard on the same topic, the board asks that they designate a spokesperson to avoid needless repetition. The board has adopted rules to preclude the abuse of open forum by, for example, anyone uselessly repeating the same comments or complaint meeting after meeting. All participants must understand that if your comment, in my judgment, constitutes a complaint against an employee or officer, I will interrupt and ask you to stop and direct you to proceed with the BISD's formal grievance procedures, be that DGBA, FNG, and GF local. With those cautions in mind, we will now be glad to hear the general comments. The first person is Mr. Randy Dunn, and there is no subject to be discussed. Mr. Dunn.
We'll find one.
Dr. Escobedo, members of the Board of Trustees, Mr. Gonzalez. My name is Randy Dunn, and I want to take just a few minutes of your time this evening to address one of the items on the agenda before you. But first, I'd like to express my gratitude to the professionals who run our school district. As I look around, I see experience, knowledge, and drive to keep our district on track. I see individuals that give of themselves to make it all work well. Mr. Gonzalez, you're quarterbacking a good team. I wish you well. The item I would like to address deals with the changing of the Board of Trustees election and the scheduling of the election in May, which would give the individuals who must run for the office the actual 3-year term they were elected to serve. When you consider this item, I'd like for each of you to look into your heart of hearts and think about what this type of public service is really all about. I would like to point out just a few reasons for moving this election to May instead of the dreaded Tuesday in November. The cost to the district to hold the election in November is doubled, perhaps maybe tripled. Could not this money have been better spent increasing the line item for teacher supplies in the elementary setting? Some of you are educators, some of you are married to educators. You know that I speak the truth when I say too many times teachers reach in their own pocket for supply money to educate our children. And that's just one line item that could have been increased. The bottom line is those are education dollars. Let's spend them on education. Another reason to move this election back to May is the focus of the election will swing back to education, not as it is now on running with the big dogs. By having the election in May, it is not sidetracked by what's going on at the national, state, or county level. It's all about education. The center of the attention is education, education, education. Education issues are why each of you are sitting here. Let's keep the focus of the election on education and the issues surrounding our district and not muddy the water by mixing our education issues with those of other public issues, other public offices. Last, but certainly not the least, having an election in May ensures that the person who works 8 hours a day and just wants to get back to their community has an opportunity to throw his hat in the ring. As it is right now, the incumbent, the professional politicians, and the elite are the people most likely to run in this election in November, because the cost to the candidate is doubled or tripled in order not to get lost in the shuffle. Rather than make it hard to seek a position as a school board trustee, let's make it easier. Let's encourage people to run. Let's don't make it harder. In the beginning, I asked you to look into your heart of hearts. I'm asking you again to look into that sacred place when you vote on this issue. Be sure your motives are what they should be, and let's put this wheel back on the cart correctly. We checked it out. It wasn't broken. Now let's don't break it. Let's put it back correctly and hold the trustees' election in May. Thank you for your time this evening and for your service to our community and our children. May God bless each of you and give you the wisdom to make the hard decisions you have to make. Have a wonderful holiday season.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Our next speaker is Mr. Beto Medrano, Professional Holidays.
Yes, before we go into that, I'd like to welcome Ruben Cortez as a new board member. I was out of town last week, so I couldn't make it. And Dr. Escobedo, the winner always gets the most votes, so we want to welcome you back. And not only did you win, but you got the chairmanship and the president, whatever you want to call it, and I think your peers qualify you as an outstanding leader, and that's why you're back. I just want to touch base in 30 seconds about what Randy Dunn did, just talked about. I was election administrator for the county, and we always wanted to make money with other entities, and we always did. And I can tell you from the bottom of my heart, Randy, that you're on the right track, because we don't need to pay. And I know that Mr. Gonzalez was kind of tight there the last time. We don't need to pay those people. We could even run it and run it properly if we select the right people. And I would gladly volunteer to help out, and it won't cost you anything. I wouldn't charge you a penny. I just wanted to also agree with Randy. He comes all the way from where he said and speaks the truth in that I look around at administrators, and I was looking around, and Inspector came in, Ms. Peña and Ms. Rachel Ayala and Jenny Pineda, and Drew Brown, all of them with experience, and I looked around over here, and all this, not only with experience, beautiful ladies that I got to sit next to, and I said, I hope my wife doesn't ask me who I was sitting next to, because I'm going to deny that I was sitting next to this beautiful lady. Look at them, all beautiful. And Gracie De Peña, former board member, president, one of the best board members that we ever had. And I don't want to offend you any guys, but she was number one. Otis, I'm sorry about that. And I've always considered Otis one of the best, but I forgot about Gracie. Anyway, I wanted to touch base on the paraprofessional holiday is that we've been talking about it. I was president of the Association of Brownsville Educators 12 years ago, and we're still talking about that at the last board meeting. Mr. Gonzalez, our super, and Rolando Aguilar, I like what you said, that this year we're going to budget it to where we don't have to pay the paraprofessionals on that Thursday after, or Friday after the Thursday. We just need to budget and todos hijos de Dios o todos hijos del diablo. In other words, it means, for those who don't understand Spanish, we're all going to treat everybody alike in our school district. And Mr. Aguilar, I applaud you for wanting to do that. And right now, even with the paraprofessionals, he asked the question about the paraprofessionals. We hold them dear to our heart because without them, we cannot function. The bus drivers and the custodians have always asked me to be a representative. When I was president or not president, they still will ask me, and including the whole cadre of janitors from Hannah High School. They always came to me so I could be able to come up here and look at your faces. And again, Mr. Aguilar and Mr. Gonzalez, for putting in the budget and for finally doing the right thing. We're doing the right, I don't want to talk anything negative about anything. And as Pat Lehman would say, he's ready to go eat those tamalos. Not tamales, but tamalos. Oh, Otis, okay. And I really thank you, Dr. Escobedo, for appointing Otis Powers to the insurance. He knows what he's talking about. He listens to the classroom teachers and all the employees, and it's going to be a big plus this time around. It's always been a pleasure working with Otis Powers because he has the employees' interests up in the top ladder of his brain. And being dressed as Santa Claus, I think he's going to be giving and giving instead of receiving. So thank you, everybody, for doing a good job. And those that I didn't mention, Ms. Galvan, you keep on doing a good job. Mr. Colunga, he's always out for lunch or something. The phone rings and he's never here. But anyway, thank you very much, Dr. Escobedo, for your leadership.
Thank you, Mr. Medrano. Our next speaker is Francisco Cifuentes, Nepotism, Favoritism, and Discrimination.
Good afternoon, President of the Board, Board members, Superintendent, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Francisco Cifuentes. I represent the school district employees. Beto said something that everybody should be treated the same, and that is my reason of being here. There are some things happening in this district that are not, they're not following the policies of the school district because of friendship, because of nepotism, because of who you know. There's instances that employees have been immediately terminated 1-2 weeks after they commit an offense against the district. And I'm not against that because every employee is responsible for his or her actions. And if they're not following the district policies, they should not be here. And I will make myself very clear on that. I don't promote laziness. I don't promote people breaking the rules. And I have never done that. And I tell employees who want to join our organization, we're not here to protect you from wrongdoing. We are here to protect you when they do wrong to you. And there was an incident that something happened recently about a couple of months ago, and it's been going in the works, cooking it up, so they can help these people avoid facing the consequences because of a friend of the friend of the friend. And we don't like that. You, the board members, you cannot micromanage the district. However, you need to make sure that the superintendent follow the policies up to the last minute and do not help people because they're the friends of the friends or whoever, any other administrator. So let's make sure that we follow those rules and that everybody's measured with the same measuring tape, con la misma regla, and that everybody should be treated the same, regardless. Do not look for ways to avoid your responsibility as administrators, because if a principal or a head of department brings you or sends you something that he wants to terminate that employee for a reason, back him up. Don't try to help the friend of the friends. Please follow the rules, follow the policies, and treat everybody the same. I have a member of my organization that was terminated immediately. He came to me and he asked me, should I resign? I said, it's not up to me, it is up to you. You know what you did, and if it was wrong, you know what you're supposed to do. And he did resign, but other employees are not. Oh no, we know high people in high places, let's stay here. And this is not the only district that does that. So please do not allow that to happen anymore. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cifuentes. Our next speaker is Paul Hemphill, trustee election date.
Mr. President, Mr. Superintendent, other members of the Board of Trustees, staff, members of the audience, and most importantly, those who are watching on television, who are the taxpayers and the parents of our students in public schools. My status of rising to speak is as follows. As a former trustee, it was my privilege to serve with Gracie DePena most of those years, those 6 years during my 2 terms. I'm a taxpayer. I'm an employer here in Brownsville. And also I'm a member of the Class of 66, which just had its 40-year reunion. Mr. Borrego, you are AWOL. We, for the most part, George, it's hard to believe that we're the same age, right? I'm not going to say which way that cuts, George. But it's my privilege to be a classmate of Mr. Borrego. And I want to, on an aside, commend what this district has done with the old building on Palm Boulevard. That auditorium is just stunning. And everybody that went, to the reunion was very impressed what you did with the building and that auditorium. Just, kudos, hats off. My topic is to urge you as trustees to go back to the spring election date, specifically 2007. And I'm going to give you 5 quick reasons. And I have not consulted with Mr. Dunn, but ironically, our reasons are essentially the same. Number 1, cost. I think you owe a report to the public, if you haven't given one yet, of the additional cost of holding that election during the general election in November. Okay, and Mr. Ortiz gave me a figure which was pretty high, and I hope hear the actual cost to the district. I'd like to hear. Number 2, by going back to the spring, you're entering into a nonpartisan season. Okay, you're not running with the big dogs, as Mr. Dunn said. It's a special time when you try to attract people who are not interested in serving for compensation. Okay, people that will serve in the college board or the navigation district board or the city, even though they get some compensation. I think it's a special time, and I think it's a time that y'all need to consider, that you don't get lost in the process of running with the confusion, okay, of all the elections and all the serious politicians who are running for major compensation. It's always been a traditional time. Number 3, you're going to avoid an arbitrary extension of a Board of Trustees term of office, okay? You're going to return to the original 3-year time period. And I think that's a very important reason. You folks know, and I know, that there's a lack of public trust. There's a cynicism from the highest level of office down to the local level. The public is cynical about public officials. I think you can go a long way towards restoring the public trust if you go back to your original time period, original term, which is 3 years, and just get back on track, folks. I urge you with the strongest terms I can and reason to go back. And number 4, we didn't consult, did we? All right. I wrote down, if it's not broken, don't fix it, okay? I have a list of elections going back to 1974. The election date, folks, April, May. There's a reason for that. Number 5, you're going to be back into compliance with the majority, what the rest of the state is doing. Ask why the rest of the state's doing the election in spring. And that reason has already been stated. I'll reiterate it just very briefly. Do the right thing. You are going to attract people who are truly interested in serving for the best interests of your children. You're going to attract voters who can focus on that. You're going to allow the media to hone in on the issues that are relevant, okay, that are relevant to all. What have we got? How many public school children do we have now? Approaching 50,000 almost? That's our focus. That should be our focus, folks, not serious partisan politics. I urge you, for the right reason, do the right thing. Go back and start in May of 2007. It's easy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hemphill. Our next speaker is Jason Klein, and the subject to be discussed was left blank.
My first board meeting, I thought it was just the sign-in sheet, sorry.
Okay, that's all right. No, we don't have a sign-in sheet for a board meeting. So
Trained well.
that concludes our public comment period.
Are we ready outside?
We will now take about a no more than 30-minute recess. I invite you all to partake in our annual traditional tamalada outside in the foyer. This meeting is recessed. We now move on to item 9, consent agenda, general function. I have received a list from my colleagues indicating there is no need for discussion or deliberation on the following agenda items. Under under consent agenda, general function A, there is no need to discuss because either it was pulled. 7, 8, 9, 11, 15. Under B, recommendation of approval of the following payments, 17, 18. Under C, recommend approval to the following budget amendments, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. Under D, recommend approval of the following contracts and agreements, 30. E, recommend approval of the following petitions or agreements, 31. F, recommend approval of the following RFQs, 32. Under item 10, closed meetings, A, personal matters, 35, 37, 38, 39. B, consultation. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Move. Excuse me,
Mr.
I
Lehman?
have a concern. On 15, it's a discussion consideration. So we are voting to what?
Well, we're going to
consent.
open it for discussion, and according to the discussion, there will be a motion if the
Well,
discussion.
I thought you had mentioned 15. So we need to take 15 out from consent and discuss it.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's mine.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Is that correct?
Number A15
Okay.
will be discussed. There was a motion by Mr. Powers and a second by Mr. Aguilar. All those in favor, raise your right hand.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. A7, recommend approval to cancel January 2, 2007 regular board meeting. I'm sorry.
Move
I'm
on to
sorry.
10, Doc.
Okay, all right. Everybody settle down, settle down.
Hey, Doc, hold on.
It's amazing how many people panic and then you.
You know what it is, Doc, is the tamales they ate with the salsa.
Yeah, the salsa.
It was the salsa de avocado, man. It was hot.
Okay, item A10. Recommend approval to authorize the administration to accept Ben Bright Elementary School project as substantially complete on a series by selection basis. Mr. Gonzalez.
Want to have a motion first
Okay, well,
for discussion?
do I have a motion?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lehman, second by Mr. Aguilar.
Motion by Mr. Powers.
Motion by Mr. Power, second by Mr. Aguilar. Discussion, Ms. Levan.
Yes, on here it says that a walkthrough was conducted on site with the project architect and representatives. And I would just like to recommend that, since we have a facilities committee, that the chair of that facilities committee or a person from the facilities committee be invited on the walkthrough.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Thank you, Dr. Escobedo, Ms. Galvan, members of the board. Absolutely. The reason we put this in there is we're not going to accept this as substantially complete tonight. However, we need to start moving in furniture. On the 14th, the furniture starts arriving. We're going to do it wing by wing, like we normally do when it's time is of the essence to get the schools in there by January. When we come back, we want to bring in the kids back to school. So that's basically giving the administration the authorization to, in order for us to move furniture in, we need to be able to accept it as substantially complete. So we're going to do it on a section by section basis until we get everything done. That means we can go in there and wax floors and do whatever we need and move in furniture, teacher desks, get everything ready. Whoever in the board, if you all want to just go see it, just give me a call. If I can't make it, I'll send somebody out there with you. Mr. Tapia, one of his staff members, somebody will be out there gladly to meet with you and be able to walk it through. I've also have a punch list that is being updated on a daily basis. And as we get through, the architects and the engineers are working closely with Mr. Tapia and getting that final punch list out of there. The thing about it is we need to put kids in there as soon as possible. So I'm asking for your authorization to allow administration, to trust administration, to accept it as they are completing it in order for us to move in furniture and have it ready for kids. But by all means, not just Mr. Lehman or any members, anybody that wants to go out there, please just call my office and we'll have somebody meet you out there. Okay?
Any other questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Galvan?
Yeah, I did have a question. When are the students going to start going to school?
Hopefully,
Right.
hopefully they'll come back to Ben Bright. We're hoping that the last week of school we'll be able to have the parents out there and show them the school and even bus the kids out there so they can see where their classroom's going to be before the semester's over. So when they come back, they know where the bus is going to go and where the classroom is going to be.
Any other questions
Right
or
as we come
comments?
back.
Thank you very much. I have a motion, a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes unanimously. Now, 11 was on the consent agenda to recall Mr. Munoz, but we need to reappoint another member. Would that have been under the same item? Or is that?
12.
That's 12, okay. All right, moving on to item 12, recommend approval of resolution number 014-06/07 for the appointment of an individual to serve on the Cameron County Appraisal District Board of Directors. Before we open the floor for nominations, would you like to make a few comments as to what that position entails, Mr. Gonzalez?
Sure. This is serving on the appraisal district. We're always granted one position in the appraisal district, which is very important because, you know, the appraisal district sets the values of how we're going to tax the individuals that are property owners in the district. And it's always good to have a district representative there. Every year you get the opportunity to nominate somebody. It's somebody that's going to have time to go to those meetings because they're long meetings. They're usually during the day. And so it's a little bit time consuming, but very interesting. And you get to represent the district, your constituents here, and be a part of the appraisal district. So I encourage that if you want to be nominated, you want to serve, go ahead and serve. But it is a little time consuming. I'm going to be honest with you. So
With
I don't know
that,
if you want to open it up for
with that said, I will now open the floor for nominations. Do I have a nomination for this appointment?
Well, I
Mr. Lehman?
believe the only one that even considered getting on there is Mr. Powers, so I will entertain or make a motion that Mr. Powers be appointed to serve on the Cameron Appraisal District Board of Directors on behalf of the Brownsville Independent School District.
Okay, there's no motion for Mr. Powers, a nomination for Mr. Powers. Is there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? If not, do I have a motion to close nominations?
Motion to close.
I have a motion by Mrs. Galvan. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes unanimously. Well, does it require a second, a nomination?
Yes.
To close nomination, okay, well, Mr. Aguilar, close the nomination, yeah. Okay, so the motion passed unanimously. Mr. Powers, congratulations on your new appointment.
You have to vote.
Well, okay, I'm sorry. All those in favor of Mr. Powers, raise your right hand. Motion passes.
Do you have a second?
Unanimous. Yeah, Mr. Aguilar was the second.
Not to close.
Yes, of course, yeah.
No, we're not. Now, there's a motion on the table to nominate Mr. Powers. Anybody who wants to second?
Okay, do I have a motion to, I don't believe that requires a second, but does anybody want to second the motion to nominate Mr. Powers? Mr. Aguilar again. All those in favor, raise your right hand.
Aye.
Motion finally passes unanimously.
There
Mr.
you
Powers, for real, congratulations on your new appointment.
I will work diligently over there, don't worry. I got the time.
Moving on to item 12, recommend approval of resolution number Moving on, number 13, discussion, consideration, and possible action on the audit plan for the 2006-2007 school year. I'll open the floor for a discussion. Mrs. Galvan.
Okay, on here, I think previously we discussed a procedure in place of what will be done with the findings of the audit and who will oversee and I did not see anything in this that dealt with that.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes, we discussed this the last board meeting, Dr. Escobedo, members of the board, and, it's a little bit rough because of the way the law is written as to who she reports to, and she reports to the board rather than to the superintendent. However, I took the liberty, even though I didn't get much direction the last time, but I took the liberty to review the plan myself. I have no objections on the plan. I think that we need to give the internal auditor some direction. If allowed, I would recommend that you all approve this, her audit plan, and throughout the year as we meet, you guys give her more specific direction, and I'll be working with her on the administrative side. So if you don't mind, we need to get it off center, and I certainly would like to work with Margarita and be able to give her some direction on that.
Mr. Aguilar?
I think the administration was given direction at the last board meeting when we were talking about approving this plan, Mr. Gonzalez. I think that one of the items that we were concerned about is what Mrs. Galvan is talking about. What is it that we're going to do with those audit recommendations? There's no response. So those procedures need to be in place on a plan so that we, if going to enforce something, has to be spelled out correctly. Not just one person will say, this is a format for you, then another person being audited has another format. So we need to be consistent. So when we said we were concerned about it and that we needed something like this way it was stable, I thought we were giving direction to the administration to look into this. In fact, some of the board members even said that all this should be discussed at the executive committee at room, and I think it was Mr. Lehman that brought this up and Mr. Otis. So if we're going to have a plan, by golly, let's give us an opportunity to look at it and discuss back and forth. And like Ms. Galvan and I had some questions. We want questions that cannot discuss it here, but give us an opportunity to do it at an executive session.
I think we can get to it, Mr. Aguilar. You made a point on this one, and I do have it in executive session to meet with the internal auditor today. And like I say, it's a little bit ambiguous because of the simple fact that I really can't give her a whole lot of direction. But if we want to, you can table it till after executive session because you are going to have the opportunity to meet with her after in executive session.
I think I would like to see that, Donna, Mrs. Galvan.
I move to table this item after executive session.
To change the order of the day?
Yes, please.
Okay, I have a motion by Mrs. Galvan to change the order of the day for the item in question until after executive session. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Lehman. All in favor, raise your right hand.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Item 14, discussion, consideration, and possible action on moving back the school board election to May of 2007. Mr. Cortez, you placed this item?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Escobedo, Superintendent. I requested this item be brought before the board. I feel that it's important that we're accountable to this school district and to the voters that have placed us here. I know I had a conversation once with Pat Lehman where he said, don't believe every rumor you hear. And you're right, we shouldn't believe every rumor that we hear. But, some of the people that voted me into this office were talking to me about a rumor that some of the members of this board wanted to move the election to May. And I said, well, that's a great idea. Let's go back and give us our original 3-year terms that we initially had. And then they went on and said, no, but into May of '08, extending it yet again. And I said, well, that doesn't seem appropriate. I don't think that is the case. So rather than being reactive, I figured I'd be proactive, bring it before this board today, given the fact that there are several members of this board who have an upcoming election in the upcoming year, give them ample time to prepare for their campaigns. I mean, after all, the cost of running an election in a May format well over doubled. I mean, from spending in the high 30s, $38,000, $39,000 for a May format election to spending nearly $110,000 a year, it just didn't seem prudent that we're spending that type of money. And not only that, getting our message out is much more difficult in a November race. Like some of these members, former trustees mentioned in public audience, we're running with the big dogs. I know having come off of a November format race, I can tell you it was much more difficult for me personally to get my message out, being in the shadow of some very highly contested races like the governor's race, the county judge's race, and some of the district court judges that were also on the ballot. You know, the Brownsville Herald reported on November 27th, 2006, and the headline read, "Election fails to draw many voters. Free chicken plates, extra credit at the University of Texas, at Brownsville and Texas Southmost College, barbecues throughout Cameron County, and a huge pachanga on county-owned property did little to draw voters to the polls in November. This is not reflective of voter apathy, but rather voter disengagement," an elections expert said. "Voters are disengaged from politics, and this is why we have a low turnout." Excuse me. It also said, and I quote, "A generation of honorable leaders can slowly restore trust." I submit to you, my fellow board members, today is a day that if we move these elections back to May of 2007, we can show the electorate that we will restore that trust and that confidence that they gave us. On December 6, 2005, item 19 on the agenda was to move the elections from May 2006 into November 2000. I'm sorry, from May 2006 into November 2006. In the discussion portion, Dr. Escobedo said, "It is my opinion that reluctance to change is indicative of being content and therefore remain stagnant what could very well be a mediocrity, not to say that we're in that position right now. What is being presented tonight," and that was on the 2005 meeting, is a pilot idea. It's a statewide trend. I told Mr. Aguilar before, he says there are only 16 districts. I say there are already 16 districts. Our neighbor here in Los Fresnos, one of them also included in this group is the largest district in the state of Texas, Houston. Now, do they know something we don't know? Do we have to look at another district, another paradigm district, or can we make our own decision? Now, I agree that it is too soon to tell if it will be successful, but it comforts me to know that if it fails, that if it does not work in the best interest of this district, we could always reverse the decision and bring it back to the way we had it, if indeed that is the best choice for the BISD. If I'm still on the board, I will personally spearhead the reversal of tonight's decision. Now, once again, I believe and I think I have the onerous task of being the swing vote, and it's not easy. It's not a good position to be in. Sir, you may have that position again tonight, and you may have that choice upon you to make. Susan Galvan, she said, "I feel that we have a choice, that we have a voice in this country, and we need more people to vote. I also feel that it would be lower cost." Now, Mr. Powers said a lot of good things, and I want to reiterate some of what he mentioned in last year's meeting on December 6th. He said, I respect everyone's opinion. I think that they're all valid, and the only problem I have with it, and it's not really a major, it's that I was voted by the people, and I think extending me another 6 months, that's not what they voted me to do. I think it's going to cost more personally. I don't see how it's not going to cost us more till this day. We have no data. We did ask TASB, Region 1, data from CFO, data from Cameron County. We received nothing. And I understand voter apathy is going to be there. November, yes, there's going to be more voters because now we're looking at a county, state, national level elections. But in May, we are the focus point, the major focus point. The people that vote in May vote for the city, the port, the college, BISD because they care at that time in May. We are the major voice, the concerns. You go to debates, the rotaries, we're going to be lost in the shuffle whether we like it or not. I know we are. But yes, there will be more voters in November. But for them to say it's not going to cost us more, I'm an accountant. There's no way they can tell me it's not going to cost us more. Till I see actual concrete evidence that it's not going to cost us more, it's going to cost us more. It's not going to be 40,000. It's going to be between 60 and 80,000. And it was actually about 109,000. That's where I come in with the numbers. But if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I just think we have to listen to the people. 8 out of 10 people told me, no, don't vote for it. And these are people that come to my office. You know I got to listen to the people. They put me in, they can put me out. So I'm sticking with the people. And I think that we have an opportunity to restore the trust that the people have given us. If in fact the board would want to consider a board extension, I feel that it's important that they put it in the format of a referendum, allowing the voters to make that decision for us. Our then board president, Pat Lehman, said, so to say that it's going to cost, that's a negotiating factor for us. So we no longer, in the May election, if we were to adopt this, to say it's going to cost us, it's a negotiating factor. Whether we share ballots, that's another cost savings negotiating factor. So I think it's a plus to begin with. To blatantly say that it's going to cost more, I really don't think so. I don't think it's going to cost us any more than what it already cost us per se. It cost almost $70,000 more. Dr. Escobedo, you again have the onerous task of potentially being the swing vote tonight. Mr. Powers, you were correct last year, and with your help, we can restore this today. Mr. Lehman, sir, you didn't think it would cost more, but it did, and you can also help us restore this today. We need to remember that we're here to serve the district and the voters who put us here. What we do here is not about us, it's about all the children. And throughout my campaign, that was my slogan. It's simple. It's about children. So we need to remember that today. I think it was Randy Dunn who said those additional monies can go into additional line items to give more resources to teachers. I think those monies are better spent in other areas versus elections. And that's really all I have to say about that.
Mrs. Galvan?
Mr. Cortez, you did say that you brought this forth due to a rumor, and you also say in your speech about swing votes. We are a board, and previously we did meet. We did have public input. We did meet as a committee with the policy committee. It was done with much consideration. I would also like to emphasize that we would like to hear from the public once again. We'd like to have public input. We would like to have articles, maybe a little announcement in the paper for the public to come forth and give us their opinion on how they feel about this election. The people did elect us. I also have received calls on this agenda item, and people are happy with it being in November. Mr. Dunn and Mr. Hemphill did say that we're competing with the big dogs. I think that's what they used. What a wonderful thing to compete with the big dogs. It really focuses on education. It brought education to a forefront, and I feel that when you're in a big election, it makes that issue very important. Our children are very important. We are here. We are voted into our position by the public. I would like to hear from the public. I would like to have a committee meeting on this, and that's my own opinion.
Mr. Aguilar?
Thank you, Dr. Escobedo. You know, it always feels good when I told someone this is going to happen, and I was correct. Mr. Powers, Mr. Colunga, and I were the only 3 people that voted against moving our elections to November. And one of the arguments we were talking about is going to cost us more money. He said, no, we're going to share a ballot. It turns out to be now we had 2 separate ballots. He said, it's not going to cost us any more in personnel. It turns out that more personnel were taken. All what we said, and it came to pass, And I believe that if we, yes, that is true what you're talking about, Mrs. Galvan. We did have public input, and they ran a newspaper right before, I think it was on a Thursday or Friday, right before the board meeting on Tuesday. I don't think that was sufficient time. And then, of course, we had other organizations that also wanted for elections stay in May. Personally, I do want to have elections in May 2007, go back. I think the people are correct. I think those that are called us. And, it doesn't make any difference if 1,000 calls you or 2,000 calls me or whatever it is, because we can always throw numbers in here. The people can call me. And so who is right? I think, in my opinion, I think people are correct. Why is it that we want to extend ourselves 6 additional months? We already did it. This board already extended themselves 6 months without public approval. Now you want to extend yourself an additional 6 months, which means that at bottom and I'm running for re-election this time around, that would be, I would serve an extra year without the approval of the public. I think that's pitiful. I'm willing to risk to run in May. If I'm elected, fine. If I'm not, so it may be. Perhaps the public has spoken, and they perhaps want to evaluate us and say, you didn't do a good job, Aguilar. And I'm willing to accept that. Because we serve on what the public tells us. If I'm not doing a good job, by God, remove me. And I will bear no ill feelings towards anyone. Because the people speaks. That's how we get elected, people. Adding 6 months is just like telling, hey, take it for granted. We run the school district. We don't take public's concern. We don't take public feedback. We just don't listen to you. We run it the way we want to. If you talk about swing votes, Mrs. Galvan, let's face reality. I was taught a lesson in one of those board meetings. I hope you don't mind, Dr. Escobedo.
I know what you're going to say. Just
You're going to say, you said, Mr. Aguilar, I'm ready to vote. We already have the 4 votes. It's a given. I think we're very naive to believe that this is not a political thing. It should be, we're here to serve not only our children, but also our public. So definitely, quite frankly, I'm very happy that what I discussed this way back when we did, those came to pass. And everybody wanted to compare us with the school districts. No offense, Mrs. Galvan, or Los Fresnos School District. They wanted to compare us, a small district that is the size of probably a high school, with BISD. I never could understand this mentality. A budget almost, if we watch it, we're almost have $500 million budget, right? And we're heading that direction. And to be compared to a small district, gosh. And I also would like for more people to run for office. I don't think November, and give an opportunity to other people in our community to run. And then the cost the candidate has to go through. If you want to say, well, Aguilar, if you can't afford it, don't run. I know some of you probably going to say that. But the expense has gone from $8,000, $9,000 to now to about $30,000, $40,000, and it's expensive for the candidates. Who has that kind of money? Only, it's ridiculous. Why is it that we can find people in our community that wants to serve because they really want to serve?
Mrs. Galvan?
Dr. Coelho, thank you very much.
Certainly.
Yeah, I'd like to say that previous to this meeting, we have not heard of any comments or anything said about the election. And the agenda item was brought to us at this time, and it wasn't an agenda item. It's the first agenda item brought to us from a new candidate. It wasn't about children. It wasn't about programs. It was about an election. I'd really like to hear from the public.
Mr. Cortez.
Also, I'd like to point out, if this does get moved back, I am really the only person that's truly affected election-wise on this. I would cut my term to 2.5 years. But I believe that would be important in sitting on this board. I think it was Otis Powers that said the meeting that I got sworn in, we're a team of 7 along with the superintendent 8. And if that means I have to take one for the team and lose 6 months, so be it. If I do a good job, then I suspect the community will reelect me to another term. If I don't, well, so be it with me, and somebody else will fill this seat, you know? So I just feel that it's important for me to say that because I would be the only one truly affected, and the cost savings that the district would have holding an election in May is it's a huge amount. It's not a few $1,000s, it's tens of thousands, you know? It's almost $70,000 price difference. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Lehman?
Well, the timing is, I guess, for this agenda item, it is political. And let me just say the apathy, number one, and I know you hit on certain notes. I said many things. One was cost because cost came up. I don't think we haven't even paid the last bill because we don't agree with it, and I don't think we will argue this bill too, Mr. Cortez. In discussions with the judge, Hinojosa, I think Mr. Munoz had discussions with him. He really didn't understand why we would be even charged if we're having a joint election and they're already budgeted. So that was one concern. The dynamics of Cameron County has changed. It's less political, and I think we can negotiate a price. But there are other issues. Voter participation, voter apathy was an issue. And also you, Mr. Cortez, now you have been afforded to be a part of the budget process where before you could not be able to do so, and you would not inherit pork barreling, as they say. So these are just issues that need to be picked up. And I agree with my colleague, Ms. Galvan. This is a democratic process. We did it transparently by having public meetings in a forum setting, and I think I commend you for taking the lead and looking at May, and we should look at it, but in the proper forum, where the public is involved and not just one individual or two or three or the swing vote. We all have to be participating. But let me tell you how political this got tonight. Only two individuals came forward to speak about the issue, Mr. Dunn and Mr. Hemphill. They don't vote in this district. Mr. Hemphill lives at the island and Mr. Dunn lives in San Antonio. That's how apathetic things are. So unless you can muster some other public opinion, you're not going to sway me right now unless we do have transparency and public meeting.
Any other Mr. Powers?
Thank you, Dr. Escobedo. I, for one, like the May election, but I think what we need to do to clarify this issue, we need to look at the policy, BBB. You're the policy chairperson, so it's balls in your court. Have a policy meeting on this issue. Have a public input. We have plenty of time to do this. Bring them back in a formal way where attorney and Mr. Gonzalez agrees with it, and then we vote on it. But as long as we do it in a policy meeting and advertise it through the Herald, and let's see how many people come in for and against. And that will tell me as a individual sitting here which way I'm going to swing. But I do like the May elections. I will tell you that right now. I'm for the May elections. If I have to run in 6 months, I have to run in 6 months. So be it. I ran four times. It's not going to be the first nor the last. So, but I think we need to do it, Mr. Cortez, in all respect, in a formal meeting with the policy chairperson. You're on the policy meeting. So you guys are going to sit there, listen to the public, and then bring them back in a formal way, which will be good for Mr. Gonzalez, Mrs. Bertha Peña, and to tell us their input as far as the elections to handle in May. That's what no further.
Thank you, Mr. Powers. Mr. Aguilar?
Oh, thank you, Dr. Scott. Yes, we'll do that. I think we have ample time to do it. It was brought up, and answering to Mrs. Galvan says that nobody knew about this item. There are many times that we don't know about items because somebody brings it up. It is in here when we get it here that we know about it, or if we don't call the superintendent. So, so he brought it up. It's good. I'm glad he did. It caused us to start thinking about something that we need to do. Dr. Escobedo, I would like to ask Mr. Gonzalez to set up a policy committee as soon as possible. The legal time is what, Mr. Saldan?
24 hours. 3 days in advance to post it.
Okay, so that would be when?
We can post Friday for any time next week.
For next week. Okay. Then I will get.
Right now, it would have to be, the earliest would be Saturday.
That's right. I will get together with you and set up some of the things that Mr. Powers recommended, and we'll take it from there.
I would like to recommend that there's plenty of time so that it will come out in the paper, as you stated.
Yeah.
We need plenty of time to to let the public know and have some input at our policy meeting.
We would like to have the same transparency, I'm sorry, Dr. Escobedo, the same transparency that was afforded the last time that we chose. Not to ramrod it, and as to add rumor that, I also heard the rumor that Mr. Cortez was, if elected, that would be his first agenda item. But to depoliticize the issue, the public needs to speak, and to hear two individuals from the audience that do not vote in this district, that is not proper representation. You need people that are in the district, and we would like to hear from them. I agree. I haven't heard one way or the other. And there's some good, and there's some, I guess we can find some bad. But to just base it on the fact that cost, and I think that was Mr. Cortez, I take it from one of your ads, I am the candidate that made an issue of wasting tens of thousands of dollars moving the school board election from May to November. So unless you have, data, that's still under their,
Got a cost bill from Cameron County Elections Office.
well, but that's subject to scrutiny, sir. And unless you pay every bill just because they give it to you, then I can see you're going to go broke pretty soon. So there is proper forum. There's proper forum to deal with all these issues, and to raise a flag based on conjecture, that is not, conducive to proper representation. We need to be transparent, and we need to bring it to the public if that's the issue.
Dr. Escobedo?
Cortez?
I have a copy of a letter that was sent back to the district on October 23rd, '06, from Paul Miles, staff attorney for Secretary of State's office, where he says that the elections bill is accurate. I mean, I won't go back and read the whole thing, but basically what he's saying is that they're in line with what other November elections, cost.
I think it's obvious, thank you, Mr. Cortez, it's obvious that we're not going to reach a conclusion tonight. All this evidence, and I'm going to call it evidence, is perfect for a committee meeting where we can bring it up and discuss it, dedicate the entire meeting to these documents and these letters if need be. Are there any other comments?
I got one more.
Mr. Cortez.
I'll agree with Mr. Powers. I think we do need to have a transparent process and put it into a policy meeting. But I will add by saying this, and I'll use this word, and I pray that this board does that always, because I know that Mr. Lehman said he thinks it's a political issue. Well, when I was on the campaign trail, this board went and made a decision without going to a policy committee, making a choice to allow district to ask candidates to voluntarily criminal background investigation. And it was recommended that they go to policy, and they went against it. So I only want to close with this, that if in the future, that type of practice is done, that, it should end. And now, we're a new body, and we should, there's a need for it to be reviewed at policy, that it always gets reviewed at policy, and that they don't just allow certain people or certain groups the ability to go outside of having to go to a policy meeting and have this reviewed.
Thank you, Mr. Cortez. Mrs. Galavan?
Yeah, one of the reasons why I'd like to have a meeting is, I'd like some facts be brought to me. For example, how much did we spend, comparison of expense? Also, how many voted? I'd like numbers. So that's the reason for a meeting. I'd like.
Ms. Galavan? Again, we're not really going anywhere tonight, but all these comments are excellent comments to be brought up. We could dedicate an entire committee meeting to it. Mr. Colunga?
Could I say something also? I just wanted to also add, or in agreement with some of the comments made tonight regarding the issues that would make it worthy of consideration would be the cost issue, plus the focus on education would be, I think, improved in a May election. The issue of a date becomes an issue of whether we are 3-year board members or 4-year board members.
which has been within our options in the past, where we can decide on should we make it 4 years or 3 years. A May of '08 designation to change to a May of '08 would make the length of the term 4 years rather than 3 years. And we haven't even decided on that, as far as should we allow board members to run for a term of 4 years or 3 years. That's never been approved by the board. And I think some of the information that comes out of the Secretary of State is indicating that even though the original subsection of the Education Code expired in 2001, that the intent of the legislature was that once we had decided on the choice as far as 3 years or 4 years, that the board could not alter the length of the terms thereafter. So there's information that would be at the state level, Secretary of State, that indicates that, that the Secretary of State is recommending the use of a 3-year term for board members with annual elections. That we as indicated, we have the option of keeping the November or May. So I think that those are some of the considerations in preparation for that meeting, that we need to request information that is available to us from the legal standpoint, as we have in the past, but I think we need an update on some of that information.
Thank you, Mr. Colunga. This is discussion, consideration, and possible action. Obviously, we've discussed plenty. We're still considering. Will there be a motion for action? No motion for action. Okay, moving on to item 15. Moving on to item 15, discussion, consideration, and possible action on creating an oversight committee for bond projects. Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Dr. Escobedo, members of the board. And item 16, Dr. Escobedo, is more or less the same thing. That was brought up by Mr. Colunga. I had put in this agenda item already as item 15 because I had told the board that I would bring it back to the board in December, the first board meeting in December, to be able to do this bond committee. And I apologize, Mr. Colunga, I already had this agenda item, but I know you put it in there also, but I'd like to discuss it along with it if it's okay with you.
That's fine. I originally had put it on for that, for the timing to look at the committee and to be in a position to make appointments so that we can get started with the business of the committee.
I think you and I are basically on the same wavelength, Mr. Colunga, and with that in mind, I'd like to go ahead and do a little presentation on this thing.
Of course.
And there's a bond oversight committee. You can call it whatever you want to, but it's basically an advisory group of citizens appointed by the Board of Trustees and the administration to oversee the bond projects.
Turn it off.
And what we would be doing is, depending on the question is, what about the bylaws and so on and so forth? Well, the bylaws would be set up by the committee themselves. That would only be fair, that the committee members develop their own bylaws, not dictated by this group of board members, but rather that the board members be allowed to appoint people and then get together and the administration give them direction, and give them examples of other bylaws. One of them close by is McAllen, of course. And I included that as part of my backup, and I hope I had the opportunity to read it. But the most important thing is to get approval from the board to even set up an oversight committee, and to encourage the board tonight to decide on how many members. McAllen has 15 members. It's a 15-member committee. And they will, once those committee members are appointed, then they decide on their chairperson and so on and so forth. And once they do that, then they start setting up their bylaws with guidance from administration. And then we'll come back to the board and ratify those bylaws. But I think it's time to get started, because in January, with approval from this board, I'd like to go ahead and set up interviews for architects. If we don't, we're going to fall very far behind as far as the high school is concerned, to be able to select architects, to be able to construct the high school. And the question has been, how long are these members going to be appointed for? For the duration of the bond program, until $135,000 are spent on what we said we were going to spend them on. What happens if a board member is not reelected or decides not to run? Will those persons that were appointed to the bond committee remain? The answer would be yes. The only way they could get off the committee if they themselves decided not to serve, or they broke some of the rules that were set up by the committee members themselves as far as bylaws, which could be attendance, it could be a whole. Now, who would replace those people? Well, those people will be replaced by that board member that appointed them. And if it happens to be a new board member that's there and no longer, no longer a board member there, then that new board member to replace that one would appoint the new persons. What happens if the superintendent's not there? Well, if I'm gone and there's somebody from administration moves out, then the new superintendent would reappoint those members. So it's a process. I think it's needed. The main part of it is being that it's an oversight committee. It's an advisory. They keep tabs of what's going on. Some communities prefer to call them watchdogs, but I don't like to use that term. I like to use it's own oversight. They really are looking at what's going on, meeting with the board, and giving recommendations. In the state of Texas, they have no authority to vote. The only ones that can approve or disapprove change orders or whatever will be the Board of Trustees. But they can certainly create the input and advise the Board of Trustees. So I'm asking for tonight to go ahead and to approve an oversight committee be established, and to also approve, hopefully, that each board member, depending on the size you want, and that would be up to you all. My recommendation is that each board member appoint 2 persons to the committee, and that the administration be allowed to appoint 1, 2, or 3 members. I prefer 3, but if you want 2, that's fine. You want 1, that's fine. However you want to do it. So I'll open up the discussion.
Mr. Aguilar.
I think it's a fabulous idea that we have an advisory committee. Thank you. A group of citizens that would help us, give us at least advice, whatever. And I hope our community really gets involved this time around, and because what we're looking at is $135 million, construction of schools. We'd like to have feedback from our community, and so I commend you, sir, Mr. Gonzalez, for allowing us to participate, the community and the board members, in a sense that we're going to nominate someone. My only concern I have is that the last time we had a committee to get an advisory, it was an insurance committee. And somewhere along the line, we dropped the ball, and they were really never got involved in the insurance as a proponent or whatever you want to call it, you see. And I hope this time around that we have a committee that the administration follows through and really gets them involved. You know, I don't think we ever gave them thanks, the insurance committee. So perhaps in the future, Dr. Escobedo, we might give them a certificate for those seven people that serve in the insurance committee that I believe was you, Mr. Colunga, that proposed the idea of having an insurance committee. And Otis was the second or whatever. And they never got involved. I'm ready to vote for this issue. But let's really follow through and get our community involved. I think it's a fantastic idea, Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you. Mr. Powers?
Thank you, President. Mr. Gonzalez, I agree. I echo his sentiments. I agree on the getting the community involved. They help us get the bond elected, and they can certainly help us in overviewing or overseeing how we spend the $135 million bond, because it's very important that we do give them gratitude and thanks for being out there for us. And we know who the committee members were. They were here most of them were here during that bond rating. So it's an excellent idea. And the key to committees, Mr. Aguilar, is the superintendent's role. If he believes in the committees, then they will not be abolished. He will make sure they work. And as you can tell, he's bringing this to us. That means he will be on top of this. So I commend you. I agree with the 2. And if you need 3, you pick 3. Yeah, that's your call on that one, I think. So thank you.
Any other comments, Mr.
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Lehman?
Mr. Powers, the help, the bond didn't get elected, it got passed. But,
I'm sorry.
yes, sir, just stand corrected. Just don't want another
Technicalities.
Yes, technicality. But I was fortunate facilities operations individual, and he's the one that really introduced me to that, the particular, the Citizens Advisory Board and model, and if it's on, anybody here can really go to McAllen ISD, and they have their own website, and everything's published. They have Gantt charts depicting their bond issue, and the public is really has hands-on information, and it's spearheaded really by that committee. So the model that McAllen has is excellent, I think. It's a starting point. Our committee can go visit and you know, hit the pavement running by utilizing that model, and it's very, very educational. So I commend that we're moving forward and making sure that the public is involved, because I think that's what we told the rating agencies and the members, that we would allow and involve the public in the process. And I noticed that Mr. Cortez, that was one of his vows on his political campaign, that he wanted to make sure that accountability was paramount on 135 million. So that's a step in the right direction.
Any other comments or questions for the board? Galvan?
I'd also like to commend administration for this effort that is being put forth. The community did elect the bond, and they need to be involved, and it's good to see that that you're going in this direction.
Thank you, Mrs. Galvan. Mr. Colunga?
If there's no further discussion, I just wanted to make a motion to the effect of
Well, we have to
creating-
make sure that there's no more discussion before we make a motion. Did you have a discussion?
Yeah, let me say one more thing. One thing.
Well, Mr. Colunga has the floor.
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
The discussion, if anyone else has a discussion, it's your call on who wants to make a comment.
Mr. Cortez, do you have further discussion?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, if we're able to get this passed tonight, how soon would we make those appointments, and would they be sent to your office, or will we do it at the next scheduled meeting?
Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Escobedo. Mr. Cortez, members of the board. I would suggest that however you make the motion, that you state in the motion whether how many members would be appointed by each board member, and then that those board members have time to think about it and send them to my office, and I'll put them all together and bring it back on the 19th board meeting, published already in your background, so you can look at who they are and sort of ratify that committee. So it gives you some time to turn it into my office by sometime at the end of next week, next Friday, a week from this Friday, to have them all in for me, and I'll put it as an agenda item, bring them back to you on the 19th for ratification, including any that you would allow me to put in.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez.
Is that okay?
Any further discussion?
I wanted to, Dr. Escobedo, on the numbers, I would agree that 2 per board member would be good in making up a similar committee to that of McAllen ISD, which has been provided to us in the background of when it was first presented, that it was with the bylaws, so that was the reason for a reference to bylaws membership and responsibilities in reference to what administration had presented to us before. So if other board members would like to
I'd like to have, I'd like to have 2 plus the 3 that the administration requests. So 17 is a good number. I mean, progressively, we're larger than McAllen, so the district is a little bit larger. But I think that's in line with handling those. What happens in committees, not all of them show up, so you need bodies, people that do want to show up. So 2 in the motion, Mr. Colunga, that you want to entertain, I would include 2 by each board member and 3 left to administration.
Any further discussion? Mr. Colunga, no? You have a motion?
Yes, I would like to move that we approve a bond oversight committee with action on the appointments by board members to consist of 2 appointments per board member and three appointments from the administration, the superintendent, to create a total of 17 members.
We have a motion by Mr. Kalunga, second by Mr. Aguilar. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes unanimously. Yes, Mr. Gonzalez?
If you could, I'd like to have the names sometime at the middle of next week, by Thursday, if possible. That gives me a chance to, who's not there, for me to appoint somebody on Friday, or to ask somebody by Friday.
Do they have to be from the district or out of district?
Have to be in
So
the
this guy.
district, have to be in district, for in-district community members.
Dr. Cueto,
I was
if
gonna get
the administration will do us a favor also, that if one of board members selects a candidate and it's being selected by somebody else, let us know, so we start looking for another.
Good point.
Appreciate it.
Good
I
point.
would. That's why I want them as early as possible.
Good point. Well, moving on to item 16, since it was open for discussion. Discussion, consideration, possible action, administration, report on bylaws, membership, and responsibilities on board oversight committee. Discussion and or action on board appointments to committee. Mr. Colunga, do you have anything further to add?
No, I think everything has been covered. Thank you.
This is possible action. With no further discussion, do I have a motion? No, Mr. Cortez?
No, I move to.
You move? Well, okay, what is your motion? All right, you retract your motion? Okay, so the motion the item dies for lack of a motion. Moving on to G, recommend approval of following bids. 33, recommend approval to award bid number 07-067 to American Contracting USA, Combs, Texas, in the amount not to exceed $1,591,105 for the 2006 district-wide re-roofing Phase 2 project subject to the district's needs and funding. Do I have a motion?
Move.
I have a motion by Mr. Power, second by Mr. Aguilar. Any discussion? Mrs. Galvan?
I just wanted to make sure that this was the lowest responsible bidder.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes, that is, Dr. Escobedo, Ms. Galvan, members of the board. Yes, it is. We know there was I need to explain this. There was an additional part of this agenda. What would I call it? I forgot exactly. Alternate that I did not recommend, and that was to re-roof the transportation department. I think transportation department needs to be looked at as a complete unit rather than just replace the roof for the buses. There's not enough roofs for all the buses anyway, so we need to decide on which way we're going with transportation eventually, whether we're going to have another area or not, and so on and so forth. So I took the alternate out, and this is strictly for schools, and there's many, many buildings within those schools that are going to be done, but this was the lowest, most responsible bid to submit it.
Mr. Lehman?
Yes, sir. I had to discuss this previous with the superintendent, and I just have observations that I want to make sure that we adhere to. We've had similar, and we probably will have other bids come up of similar size, Mr. Gonzalez?
That's correct.
Yes. I think back in November 7th, 2005, we had an agenda item, or we had a project that included Cromac, El Castillo, and Palm Grove. And I recall, and I dug up the information, I did have it. The square footage on that one was at $10.44, and it's still, this is a simple SBS modified, if I'm not mistaken. Same process?
Yes.
My only question and concern was that the bids that came in were extremely high. And in doing a little research, and I don't know whose judgment call it is, whether it's administration, but in the modified process, I guess we only chose one particular system with, I guess, the ability to substitute. But other than Garland, there's Tremco, Johns Mansville, Supremas, Cypress, Firestone, Gaff. But I'd like to see in the future, have general specs. I don't know why we just limit our bidding, because up the valley, and let me shock some of you, and maybe the same bidders go out, but I guess we're open game. And Mr. Cortez, since you want to put a lot of money into the children, this is a good opportunity to hold administration accountable. The latest bids, like Junior High, McAllen Junior High, their re-roofing for their junior high is at $8.18 a square, same process, with tapered insulation. UTPA, $10 a square. UTPA Coastal Lab at the Island, $11.19. And there's others, $9.68. So, and then we paid $10 and some odd less than a year ago. So we're paying now almost $13 a square foot, which equates to $1,300 a square. So technically, we're leaving close to $500,000 on the table, and either, and these are small jobs, they're not that big, and I was told why we don't break these individual projects because of cost and participation, but, in some cases here, you have 2, 4, 5 bidders, 6 bidders, 2, 4, 6, 7 bidders, so I would like to make sure that all processes that are, thermal plastic, I think we had one individual that wanted to bid a thermal plastic or PVC, and apparently was not allowed to. And that process probably would have come in much more economical and probably just as efficient. I think you had an opportunity to see it in Orlando, and I think you were satisfied with it. So I think the district needs to really look at these processes. I'm not comfortable with the type of warranty that I was told the Garland system has. It has a 10-10-10. If anybody understands that, it's a 30-year spec, but it's a 10-year contingency, and that's a maintenance situation. If we don't adhere to specs, it's going to end up costing us more. So we're already paying more, and we might end up paying absolutely more in the future. And the memo here, to go for 30 years, we're re-roofing a roof that is 18 to 20 years. We don't even know how old it is, but they're 20 years old. So unless we're excluding deliberately or the architect is not familiar with the other process, we need to start looking at other architects that are in the business of doing roofing, whether in paving. I'm not just picking at roofing, I'm picking at other aspects of construction, because $135 million is a lot of money. And we need to make sure that we spend it correctly. And Ms. Galvan, I don't know what you guys do in Los Fresnos, but you seem to get your money's worth. You get that, the bang for the buck and the buck for the bang. So apparently we need to either go visit you guys and see how you do it, because you seem to spend less, and we seem to spend a lot of money. So I'm not satisfied with these numbers. That's all I got to say.
Mr. Cortez?
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez, is this the lowest and best bidder?
Yes, it is, Mr. Cortez. And I might want to address situations. The cost of roofing has gone up, if I may, Dr. Escobedo. And I certainly take to heart what Mr. Lehman says, and I think from now on we're going to work with more generic type information and see what we can get the best we can. So this bid went out, and it's true. Hannah High School in April of '05, it came in at $10.51 a square foot. Phase 1, which was Cromac del Castillo and Palm Grove, came in at $10.44. This administrative building, which we're going to be doing here starting probably in about 2 or 3 weeks, came in at $11.67, and that was in August of this year. And now in September, a month later, came in at $12.90. That's when the prices were high, and they're still high because of petroleum. They're all petroleum-based products. And we are using Tremco or Garland type roofs. However, that's not to say we have to stick with them. You're right, Mr. Lehman. So when we look at facilities committee, I hope we call one soon, we'll be able to address the situation and be more generic in nature and move forward and maybe look at different options. But right now, this bid is the best bid for the roof that was there, and it is a Garland type roof. So we're looking there, which is a modified roof. So I think we need to get this one out. The roofs are really needed right now. And then if we want to look at a different direction, we'll be glad to look at it. And I give you my word, we will be looking at different options.
This would be my second request, and not to harp on you, Mr. Gonzalez. Dr. Salkowski ignored the fact that this is my second request. We open it up
it'll be my first request.
to technical aspects of roofing, not just to one specific. And I commend you for taking the high road, and then I'll come back and I'll say I told you so. then otherwise I'll eat my words and eat crow.
Okay.
But not when we have numbers from up the valley, and we would like for those people to come down and entertain the bidding process. But if PBC is a good process, and I think you're sold on it, then we should entertain, or at least pilot, take one or two, or just one, just simply see if it works. But I'm still concerned, and maybe staff can explain to me the 30-year warranty process, the 10-10-10, because I'm not familiar with that. I just want to make sure I know what we're getting.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Well, let me look at it. I have it here because I expected. It says warranty, and I'm just going to read it because I'm not an expert on warranties on roof. But manufacturer's warranty, 30-year warranty, signed by a corporate officer of the Corporation of Modified Bitumen Sheet Roofing System Manufacturer, will pay all authorized costs or repairs to the roof membrane system necessary to stop any leaks which occur during the 30 years period from the date of completion. Leaks which occur only as a result of the following will be repaired: deterioration of the roofing system or flashing system resulting from ordinary wear and tear by the elements, they'll take care of that. Workmanship, they'll take care of that. Splits and breaks of the roofing system not caused by structural movement, they'll take care of, or failure or movement of any materials underlying the roofing system. Blisters, wrinkles, ridges, fish mouth, or open laps in the roofing system, and slippage on the roofing system or flashing systems. So they basically tell you how they're going to cover the roofs on a 30-year warranty. I don't know whether in 25 years this companies will be in place, but we hope the manufacturers will be in place. And that's how they're going to take care of it. And it's the only way we can go on these warranties. So do roofs usually last 30 years in South Texas? Probably not. Can we look at a 20-year type warranty, which is mostly where they go to? We probably could. And so we go forth in the next bid, we would certainly look at the warranties. I think 20 years for South Texas is plenty. It's like our houses. I think in 20 years we replace our roofs. It's just a matter of wear and tear and the type of weather we have in South Texas. So I'll look at that, and I know you made the request before. Did not have that opportunity. I wasn't sitting in this position. But now I am, and I'll take it to heart, and we will be addressing that.
And I would like a true warranty from the manufacturer.
Definitely.
The applicators, all applicators come and go. But it's the manufacturer that you would like to hold to the carpet. But I want a true warranty, not something that is factored on inspection and maintenance, because apparently we don't even know when we last roofed a job. So, I mean, unless we keep good records, we're going to know. But I commend you, Mr. Gonzalez, to taking the bold step, and hopefully I'll be waiting.
Mr. Aguilar, do you have a comment?
Yeah. How many bid for this job, Mr. Gonzalez?
It was, we had 1, 2, 3.
At 4.
4.
4.
They submitted the a bid, right? Again, makes me wonder, like Mr. Lehman was talking about. Why is it when Brownsville go out for bids, we have a very low bidders? I wonder, and I've been asking this since I don't know when. Why some other contractors don't come and bid? I just wonder.
I think
look into it.
that's a good point, and I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that problem should be alleviated to an extent by breaking these projects into smaller projects and asking for generic specs. Perhaps we'll have more vendor participation, and I believe that's what we'll be doing.
But he makes a very good point, because 2 of the bids were not even closed. I mean, we only had 1.9 million, and they were overbid. So technically, you only had 2 bidders, and those 2 bidders were within 8,000 of each project. So, you begin to wonder, unless, I'm not going to say anything, but you begin to wonder.
And we'll be opening those up, getting smaller projects where the person, the company that doesn't have the bonding capacity for bigger projects will still be able to do on a school-by-school basis.
I want to make sure that we're going to go for tires, that we get Firestone, Goodyear, and everybody else, because a 2-ply is a 2-ply.
And that's what we'll be doing. We'll be doing generic specs.
Quite well is quite well.
Any other, Mr. Powers?
Thank you, President Escobedo. No, Mr. Gonzalez, I think Pat Lehman brings a valid point, but that should be discussed, like you said, in the facility. This is your first opportunity to address it, and it all is based on the RFPs that go out. I know every contractor is notified of these bids. Now, why they don't make bids, I don't know. But I support your recommendation because we can't delay these, and these are older schools too. And we need to take care of these older schools. So we need to move forward and address these issues in a facility meeting, Mr. Lehman. No further comment.
Thank you, Mr. Powers. Anything, for any further discussion? If not, do I have a motion and a second to approve item 33? All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed?
Aye.
And I will be abstaining. We now move on to item 10, closed meeting as pursuant to the Texas Government Code, section 551.071, 551.072, and 551.074, 551.082, and 551.084. Board now goes into closed session. Got the same motion?
Yeah, but I mean,
The board reconvenes after closed session. We will now address item A13, which was moved earlier in the meeting. Discussion, consideration, and possible action on the audit plan for 2006-2007 school year. Do I have a motion?
Mr. President, I move to
We're on
Take
item A13, correct?
yes, 813. I move to take action on the audit plan for the fiscal year 2006-2007 school year.
Motion by Mr. Powers. Do I have, you have a second? Second by Mr. Aguilar.
Are we gonna give authorization at that time?
No. Later on the policy meeting.
All those in favor, raise your right hand.
aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to item 40.
No, 36.
I'm sorry, 36. Do I have a motion? Motion to approve item 36 as read.
I move to accept 36.
Motion by Mr. Powers. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Cortez. All in favor, raise your right hand.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Item number 40. Do I have a motion?
Yes, Mr. President. I have two of them, so I'll read the first one. Move to approve the settlement in the due process hearing, Stephanie G., in the amount as discussed in executive session.
Motion by Mr. Powers, second by Mr. Lehman. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries unanimously.
Mr. President, I have another one.
Mr. Powers?
I move to approve the authorizing administration to attempt to settle the due process hearing, Andrus G., in the amount discussed in executive session.
Motion by Mr. Powers. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Aguilar. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to number 41. Do I have a motion?
Mr. President, I move to authorize the internal auditor to elicit a response from a former administrator to complete the change of administrator audit.
Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Aguilar. All in favor, raise your right hand.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 6-1. Moving on to item 11, announcements. I'm sorry, moving on to item 42A. Do I have a motion?
Mr. President,
Mr. Powers?
I move for the acquisition of real property on item A and item B.
Motion by Mr. Powers for item 42A and 42B. Do I have a second? Second by Mrs. Galvan. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries unanimously. All opposed? Okay, Mr. Lehman abstains. Motion passes 6 in favor, 1 abstention. Moving on to item 11, announcements. Item 43, next scheduled board meeting on the Board of Trustees is on Tuesday, December 19th, 2006, at the Administration Building at 5:30. Mr. Gonzalez.
Yes, I have one more announcement, and this is for you, board members. And I'll try to remind you before this. But the next board meeting, you need to be here a little bit early, by 5:15. That's when you're going to be scheduled to take a photo opportunity. So wear the proper attire for Christmas. This be the right, is that not for Christmas? It's for, what is it? The formal, the thing that goes out there, suits and everything.
No reindeer outfits.
No reindeer outfits. It's all the proper attire.
For the yearbook and all that.
I will take the hat off only for the photograph. Only
Okay.
for the photograph.
Ties? What are you looking for, Drew? Go your books.
And what if we don't bring a tie? We don't get in the picture, man? Thank you.
Stand in the back.
We'll crop you out.
Any other announcements, Mr. Gonzalez? Okay, if no other announcements, move on to item 12, adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move.
Motion by Mrs. Levin, second by Mr. Powers. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries unanimously. This meeting is adjourned.